Hello, I'm back because as of just a few days ago, I finished the KIIP course. I passed the level 5 test. I didn't really expect it to be over this quickly. Everyone entering level 5 first has to take the Youngju course, which is a total of 70 hours. You need to have completed a total of 56 out of 70 hours, but that's 48 out of 60 class hours and 8 out of 10 extracurricular hours. But then, if you complete that course, you're qualified to take the Youngju test, or you can go on to take the Xinhua course and the Xinhua test, which is 30-hour course. I mean, I don't know the details of the course because I haven't taken the course, and I'm not taking the course because that is to apply for Korean nationality. Guess what? Technically, Korea does not have citizenship. They have nationality. It's just what they call it. In the US's case, anyone born in like the 50 states has US citizenship, but if you live in some of the US territories, you only have US nationality, which means like your passport says you're American, but you can't vote in elections because it's weird like that and unfair. Anyway, Korea does not have a distinction between nationality and citizenship, but they just call it nationality. And the means by which to acquire nationality are not quite the same as in the US, but yeah, you can take this nationality test, which allows you to apply for Korean nationality. But that's not what I did. I took the Youngju thing, which is for permanent residents. So I completed the course in the spring, the early spring, by the end of March, actually. It was a relatively short course, went from February to March. There was a test in May, and I tried to replicate what I did with the level 4 test in class. Took the class from September to the beginning of November, and the test wasn't until the middle of December. So I visited my family in New York for a month, like from November to December, and my plan was to study for the test, and I did not. When I took the test, I was not well prepared, and while taking the test, I kind of thought like, oh, I'm gonna fail this. So on the speaking portion, I just like shrugged my shoulders and gave up. And I think my eventual score was 56, and I needed a 60 to pass. So like I was ridiculously close. And I guess if I had made an effort on the speaking part, I could have passed, but I had resigned myself to failure at that point. Anyway, I was ready to retake the level 4 class so that I could pass the test with a score of 40 instead of a score of 60. But there was another test given at the end of January, and I registered for that, and I studied for the whole month, and I took that test, and I passed with a score of 70. At that time, I had registered to retake the level 4 course, so I quickly unregistered from the level 4 class, registered for a level 5 class, which was an in-person class within walking distance from my apartment, but still it would have been in person. And then like the next day, someone dropped out of an online class, so I switched and I took the online class from February through March. And then I planned again to visit my family in New York during the month of April. And I planned to study, and this time I studied. KIIP levels 1 through 4 are mostly about grammar and vocabulary. They're also about some culture things because each chapter is about like a certain situation, like terminology related to being at a bank, terminology related to being in the immigration office, stuff like that. So you learn situational things. But level 5 is entirely content about Korea itself. You got culture, society, economy, politics, law, history, and geography. In general, I thought it was kind of interesting. Textbook is entirely in Korean. If you bought a textbook on Korea, it's written the way a textbook on Korea would be written if the only language you understood was Korean. It's not trying to be tricky. It's not trying to test you about grammar and vocabulary. It's not writing things in like elegant wording. When it comes to law and referring to the Korean Constitution, when it refers to important points, it will phrase like the point the same way every time because that's how it appears in law or in the Constitution. And on the test, if they test about those specific points, they're not going to like phrase it in a tricky way. For example, if you know each individual president and there's a question on the test about like a specific president or a specific administration, and the four choices are different presidents. If you know each one, like, the answer will be very easy because the presidents all did very different things. The textbook does use a lot of, I don't want to say technical vocabulary, but like when it refers to law, it's going to use the vocabulary related to the specific points of law. That can be hard to memorize, but what I banked on for the test, and what worked out that way, is that this vocabulary isn't really used in isolation. It's always used in context. For example, the Korean prime minister, who's essentially, from an American perspective, it's almost like the American vice president. They'll always word it like, this is the person who helps the president. Even if you don't remember the word for prime minister, the context in which like they explain what that is always the same and easy to recognize. So you don't have to know every single word as long as you can understand the general context of like the sentences or the questions. There is a level 5 textbook and a level 5 workbook. There's a workbook for every level. And in my class, we never went over the workbook. But in preparation for the test, I went over half the workbook. The questions on the actual test are exactly the same format as the questions in the workbook. So if you're familiar with the way they ask questions in the workbook, it's very good preparation for the test. So what happened, I prepared enough. There are 50 chapters in the textbook, and I went over like 1 or 2 a day, and then like I was kind of running out of time. So then like I kind of tried to do 4 chapters a day. I finished going over the textbook the first time. I used like Papago just to translate it so I could remember the substance of the content in English, hope that I recognize most of the words in order to figure out what it's asking. My goal had been to go over the textbook again and try to memorize more of the vocabulary. And then after that, I started going through the workbook. So I did like a decent amount of studying in New York, and I came back here, and 2 days before the test, I got a cold, but it was pretty bad. Like for those 2 days, you know, when you get a head cold, even if you sleep like 8 or 9 hours at night, and you know, like they were good, it was good sleep. Like it wasn't restless, you didn't have nightmares, it wasn't like a fever dream. But then you get up and you immediately feel exhausted because your head cold is telling you like you're just exhausted all the time. So I was like in and out of sleep for those 2 days before the test. I'm like, I couldn't study at all. Like I had no brain power. Okay, at this point, I just need to attend the test and fail it. If I fail it, at least I can retake the course and then try to pass the test with a score of 40 instead of 60. If I don't attend the test, I could get penalized. I don't know the details, but some people say that if they register for the test and don't show up, that they're prevented from taking it from 2 years. I don't know if that is actually the case. But so on the day of the test, I wasn't like exhausted anymore. Like I finally had energy, but I was still mentally stuffy. I couldn't really think that well, but I was like, okay, I can get out of bed, I can go outside, I can go to the test site. So I did that. I showed up for the test. Was not feeling great. The weather was all right. Right when the test started, the multiple choice part, I looked at the questions and I was like, I have enough brain power to read the questions, to recognize what it's asking. I think I can actually answer these questions. So I did. And to this day, I only remember the last question on the multiple choice part. My head was so fuzzy, I couldn't remember the rest of the test. Then there's a 10-minute writing section where for level 4, you have to write up to 100 characters. This test, it's 200 characters, and it tells you the grading rubric. If you write less than 100 characters, they can award you a total of 2 out of 10 points. If you write less than 150 characters, they can award you 6 out of 10 points. And if you write between 150 and 200, you could get a potential 10 points. The question they asked was not hard. It did not require knowing any specific vocabulary. You had to like imagine a scenario and describe it. And I was like, oh my God, my mind's not working. So I started writing, And then 10 minutes flew by and I'd only written like 160 characters, which at least passed the 150 threshold. But like I was hoping to fill up the whole page and was not expecting the time to go by that fast. So I would recommend for that section rushing. So I don't know how many points I got specifically for that writing section. Then there was the speaking part, and man, I was in the second to last group, so I had to just sit there for 2.5 hours. Now you're allowed to like take out your textbook and study. I don't really know what you would study because either you know the content and you can react fast enough to answer the questions, or you can't. And I didn't bring my textbook, so I just waited 2.5 hours, which was exhausting. And when I went in, my brain was like almost empty. Before you go into the speaking section, they give you like the grading sheets, which you will give to the proctors. You can read the grading sheets, and it describes what kind of questions you'll be asked. And the first question, I don't know if they actually asked 5 questions. It felt like they asked 2-part questions for a few of them. But anyway, the first question is you read a passage and they'll ask you a context question about it. You don't have to like read it and then like remember and then regurgitate it. You literally just have to quote the relevant section of the passage back to them. I've seen someone say like when they tried to make up their own answer, the proctor said like, no, just read from the text. So I think I got full points for that first question, and then the rest of the questions I just did not answer. I understood the questions, but my brain was just empty. I could not answer. So I was pretty sure like I failed the test because I didn't even try to answer the speaking questions. But I passed with a 63. I'm just done with KIIP. I was convinced that I was going to fail that test, and I had all my textbooks out and I had a plan of how to study for the next test. I don't know if I'd recommend taking the KIIP course for fun. I mean, I guess if you want to learn Korean, technically it's a free course. You have to pay to take the test, but the course itself is free. I'm very glad to be done with it and not have to worry about that anymore, because once you complete KIIP, it's on your record permanently. I might do some more streams because I really need to unwind from this year of studying and learning Korean. So I might just stream and talk about random things or not talk at all. So congratulations to me.